Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I'd like to review an absolute EDC standard, and that's this guy here, the Benchmade Ritter Griptilian. So there are many varieties of Griptilian out of Benchmade. The Doug Ritter version is made by, well, Doug Ritter, although it's still with Benchmade, and it's just got a slightly different blade shape and usually an upgraded blade steel. You're looking at S30V here in this case. I think the new one's coming M390. So that's nice, but this review will hold for pretty much any of the Griptilians, although I'm talking about the Ritter version particularly, which I've always found to be the most compelling of them anyways. So, there you go. I want to thank my buddy Jim for sending this guy along. This is one of his knives, and it is a user. It shows clear wear. He said this knife has seen a whole lot of action, too. It's actually done batoning and things like that. He takes it camping. So, this is a knife that's seen some mileage, and there you go. Then finally, a quick size comparison here. Here is your Ontario Rat number 1. So you can see the cutting blade length is pretty similar in terms of that. Spyderco PM2. Again, similar blade length. Spyderco Delica, Ontario Rat number 2, much smaller blade, and yeah, I think that'll do for a size comparison. Yeah, US quarter. Why not? So, let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the bad, and the ugly of your Benchmade Ritter Griptilian, as always. Okay, so on the good side, first off, this has a nice, reliable action. It is a Benchmade axis lock, and when those are done well, they're really compelling for a couple of reasons. They're just relying on washers, yet you can get a fair amount of smoothness out of them if you maintain them well, and the one that you get was done well at the factory to start with. And so you don't have as much issue with sand and grit as you might in, say, a frame lock or a compression lock, something like that. So that's nice. It's a nice, reliable action. It is also completely ambidextrous, although I am completely bad with my left hand. I can assure you that you can open and close this knife very nicely with the left hand. So that is a nice thing, and that's one advantage that the Axis lock has going for it. The ergonomics on this guy are pretty damn good. I got no real issue with it there. You can kind of choke up, although it's not super comfortable, but overall, especially with the stock clip here, this works nicely. Fills my hand nicely, and given my hands are smaller than most, so I imagine it would do even better for somebody with bigger sized hands. So that's good. Also, the thumb stud is in a good position here, so you can really fire the blade out with no major concern, and you can use the axis lock to do that if you prefer. I usually will do it that way. So that's nice. The blade on this guy is nice. It's got a very nice blade shape to it. It's almost a full flat grind. It's got a fair amount of flat with a little bit of belly up here. That's nice. I tend to appreciate that a lot. It's a very good slicer because honestly it's not so thick. Compared to say a PM2 here, you can see that the blade on your Ritter grip is a lot thinner, which is nice. And it's in the same range as your Spyderco Delica, although actually the Delica maybe is a little tiny hair thinner. But nonetheless, it's a very thin blade, all told, which makes for very good slicing. Yet it's still going to be plenty durable. No problem there. So that's nice. I appreciate that a lot. The steel on this guy is S30V, which is A-OK. They're shipping a lot of the new ones at M390, which is even better. But either way, the steel is good to go. No complaints there. In terms of the clip, you have two positions, right side and left side, so it's ambidextrous there too. Only tip up. And if you contact Benchmade, they will send you a deep carry clip for free, which I don't have on here, obviously. It's a loaner, but which works just fine. And so it can be deep carry with no considerable issue. That's nice. And then this knife is durable. I mean, for what it is, there's not a whole lot to go so wrong with it. And so it's capable of doing some harder use, which is nice. And is more than can be said. Honestly, it's a pretty trustworthy knife to have in your back pocket. You're not going to hurt this guy in a real way. So there's your good. It's got that nice, reliable axis lock action with the ambidextrousness. Ergonomics on it are really good. The Ritter blade shape is really nicely designed and honed. I think this is probably the best Griptilian blade of all the ones I've handled. So that's good to know. The blade is with a good steel. Benchmade can send a deep carry clip, and it is capable of some hard use if you need to. So there you go. Let's jump into your bad. Okay, on the bad side, three things. First off, the liners are skeletonized, which means that although there is metal here and here, the metal only, on the inside here, the steel only extends about this far down into the blade handle. The rest of this is just all plastic. And that's fine, and, the knife is still plenty durable, but even with that skeletonization, you're still looking at about 4 ounces. And that's in the same range as your Spyderco PM2 here. Whoa there. Yeah, which is at 4 point, about the same, actually a little lighter, which has full liners. So you're paying a price in more plastic, less liner, and at the same time, I don't know, you're not gaining a whole lot in terms of weight reduction. Another ugly thing, I'm sorry, this is bad, not ugly, is that this is pretty chubby in the pocket. I mean, relative to your Spyderco PM2, it is way, way thicker in the pocket. Relative to your Spyderco Delica, it is hilariously thick in the pocket. Relative to, let's see here, your Ontario Rat number 1, the not PM2, wow. The Ritter grip is thicker than that, and it is actually thicker than my current thickest knife, which is the Graham Razel, which is a pretty thick knife, and even still, because of the bulge in the scales here, there we go, this is a thicker knife. So this is a thick knife. You're going to feel it in your pocket. It's not the end of the world by any stretch, and that's part of the reason that it feels very nice in the hand. But this is big. So you got to keep that in mind. And then finally, I complain about this a fair amount, but the thumb stud is in the slicing path of the blade here. It's not quite as bad as in, say, your Benchmade Rift or something like that, where it's way out in the middle there. But this could actually be a problem if you're trying to slice into something and, whatever you're slicing into keeps getting caught on the stud. So that's a little unpleasant. I do much prefer a knife that will kind of have some kind of protection for that, and that will guide the material you're slicing away from the thumb stud. So, there you go. So that's your bad. The skeletonized liners, with still a fair amount of weight, it's pretty chubby in the pocket, and the thumb stud could interfere with slicing because it's in the blade path. Let's go into your ugly. Okay, so on the ugly, there are three things. First off is the case with all Benchmades right now, and that's that Benchmade is currently, in 2016, having a major quality control crisis. Basically, they don't have a quality control department. So if you're going to buy a Griptilian, it's really best to do it at a brick-and-mortar store, where you can go in and find one where you don't have any side-to-side blade play. The blade doesn't wiggle like that. Where there's no vertical blade play. The blade doesn't wiggle like that. The blade is centered, and it's still relatively smooth. Those are out there. Benchmade is still making some quality knives, but they're passing out a bunch of crap with them. So be careful there. Either buy used from somebody you trust to tell you got a good one, or buy brick and mortar, or buy from a specialty store that's willing to do the check for you. Or be prepared to send it back to Benchmade for them to finally get it right this time. So there you go, that's one issue. Second issue is the scales on this guy. They are some kind of a plastic, and honestly, although they're probably fine from a way, durability and construction standpoint, they feel really cheap to me. These scales are the reason I don't buy Griptilians. They're really they're ugly. And for some reason it really turns me off, particularly the hollowness of it. Just bothers me a little bit. You can get lots of aftermarket scales for these. I've got a review of a mini grip with some AWT scales that I liked well enough. But the plastic scales bug me. There's a new version in G10 scales, which is slightly better. But still, that's the biggest demerit for me on the Griptilian, is it feels plasticky, and I don't necessarily trust that. But like I said, it's absolutely fine as a functional tool because of it. Then the third ugly thing is that at the price point here, which is about $130, there is a lot of competition. You're right in the territory of your PM2, you're right, you've passed the territory of your Delica here, or your Rat number 1. All of these knives are right in there, and so that's a little bit ugly that, this guy has fierce competition coming in at its price point. And some of those don't suffer from some of the downsides. So actually, let's just jump on into the conclusion here. Okay, so this is a solid knife, and it's a solid choice for EDC. I mean, Benchmade wouldn't have sold a bunch of these if it wasn't. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's crap or it's bad or there's really anything so wrong with it. It's a solid choice, and if you love the Griptilian idea, you love the aesthetic, then great, have fun, especially consider the Ritter versions. But the thing is, for me, there were compromises here. It's a little too thick, it's a little too plasticky, and it's a little too pricey to really be super competitive. Because for $10 less, you can pick up a Spyderco PM2. This is a good knife. This is a great knife. I'll take greatness any day of the week, especially greatness with quality control. Or similarly, even for less than half the price, this is the Ontario Rat 1 in D2 steel, and I would probably rather carry this guy than your Griptilian. It's a really nice knife, even though it's pretty inexpensive. Yeah, it's got some disadvantages, but so does this guy. And this is full liners. It just feels a little bit beefier. You lose the axis lock, you lose the ambidextrous, and so lefties, this may really be the better choice here. But at least for me, that's where I'd go instead. And so ultimately, if you love the look or if you're okay overpaying, then, and you can get one of these guys in person where you can play quality control for yourself, then yeah, go for it. It's solid. You're not going to hate it. It's not a terrible knife by any stretch of the imagination. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that for the same amount of cash you would pay for this, you can do better. So that's the final verdict on the Griptilian. I hope you found this interesting, that you have yourselves a wonderful rest of your day, and that if the occasion comes up, that you can get a grip. It's not a recommendation, just a crappy joke. Bye now.